You're listening to The Breakfast Show here on Faith FM, and it's now the time for our interview, Lawson, and I'm looking forward to talk to Michael Cooke from Creation Ministries International. He's calling us all the way across the Tasman Sea from New Zealand, and he's going to be sharing with us about a few things regarding new evidence, new research on dinosaur soft tissue. Michael, who is an electronic engineer and designer. Michael, good morning to you. It's great to have you with us on board this morning.
Oh, it's a real privilege to be here this morning. Again, greetings to all our listeners over the Tasman. Yes, I'm calling from Hamilton, New Zealand, and it's a beautiful day over here. But it's a real privilege to be back again and to share a bit of time with you, especially as the year draws to an end. There's much to think about for next year.
Absolutely. Just before you talk to us about dinosaur soft tissues, I just wanted to take advantage of your experience with as an electronics engineer, Michael. And I do not know if you were here when Lawson was telling his story about the solar flare that allegedly caused some bit flipping on Airbus aircrafts. Have you looked into any of that? Have you seen that news in the news cycle at all?
Yes, I have, very much so. I think about 6,000 A320s were grounded around the world for an urgent software upgrade. So we are very aware of the impact potentially of solar flares and electromagnetic interference with electronic systems. We live in a very connected world, don't we, these days? And so it's something that they have to design from power systems and grids right down to electronic stuff. So yeah, that was an event happened a while ago that caused an uncontrolled action on a plane, and they had to deal with it. So yeah, it was good engineering, amazing stuff, but it shows you the world we live in.
Absolutely. Look, I'm an absolute layperson and ignorant in that area of the interaction between, solar flares and electronics. But it sounded a little bit dodgy to me, like the Airbus, like kind of blaming the solar flares for bit flipping. Do you think that there's any credence really to that specific case that this could actually happen? Particularly because some people said that there was not any significant solar activity on that day. What do you make of that?
Well, that's a really good point. I can't dig in too deep. So I guess it's one of those things, but they certainly, but yes, the fact that the hardware, and they did say some cases they had to replace hardware or change hardware. So, software itself, there's error recovery and so on that can happen. So that can be a software thing, but, shielding and, screening and that sort of thing is a hardware type thing to protect from flares. So yeah, I guess we take it, as they say, yes. It is a real phenomenon, but whether it was applicable to that or something they were looking at elsewhere, I don't know, but yeah, it's a valid.
But it can happen. It's definitely something that is in the realm of possibilities.
It is absolutely. Yep.
All right, Mike. So changing gears a little bit to dinosaurs. You mentioned that there is some new research around dinosaur soft tissues. Can you tell us a little bit more about what's being found and being studied on that sphere?
Well, in some ways, it's not that new, but many of your listeners would have heard, and I'm sure some of my colleagues have spoken about the finding of soft or partially fossilized dinosaur tissue, including remnants of red blood cells, capillaries, collagen, osteocytes, all sorts of things that are not fully fossilized and should have degraded, thousands of years ago. We definitely within millions of years can be completely gone. They're finding soft tissue and especially blood cell remnants and so on in dinosaurs shows that the millions of years cannot be true, and yet the millions of years are needed for evolution. And so, yeah, we've in our most recent Creation magazine just been released at the moment. So creation.com is our website, but Creation magazine is our premier resource. And this issue has a little section about experiments done on chicken bones, because they come up with this idea, well, we know the bones are 65 million years old for dinosaurs, but we need to find out how blood cells can last that long. Of course, so what they're doing, they're trying to find different ways of preserving blood cells for potentially even longer times than just natural degradation would happen that we'd see day to day here. So they've done all sorts of things to come up with ideas of hemoglobin and iron preservation and the toast hypothesis and so on. But they've done some experiments with chicken bones to see whether hemoglobin will preserve blood cells for longer. Okay. And they found in actual fact, that iron and hemoglobin actually causes degradation, especially of collagen, even faster than they expected. So it actually goes the wrong way for the evidence they'd hoped.
Okay, so let's just backtrack here because I think this is absolutely fascinating. So the evidence, the hard facts are soft tissue has been found in what would otherwise be interpreted by many scientists that hold on to the evolutionist deep time view to be, hey, this is very strange. We thought that could never happen, but we are finding some soft tissue that can even stretch from dinosaurs. We must find an explanation of how could that have survived 65 million years or so. And they're running some experiments to see, to test that hypothesis. And you're saying that they could not even make some soft tissue from chickens last longer than a few months. Is that what's kind of happening?
That's right. Yes, it's a fascinating thing. Now, of course, even to think that dinosaur fossils could have lasted for a few thousand years since the flood and still have remnants of tissue in them is amazing. We're talking thousands of years of preservation. We're obviously very degraded, but still recognizable blood cells and so on. And so, they've done some actual empirical science, done some experiments soaking these bones in different solutions, iron-rich ones, phosphate-rich ones, and so on, and looking at the degradation rates of the marrow within the chicken bones. And, they found that certainly hemoglobin, iron-rich actually causes degradation of soft tissues, even more so than in pure water or in phosphate. So, this really, really is a major issue.
Very interesting.
To reinforce with your listeners is that people say, well, 65 million years, that sounds a long time ago, but people don't realize how much time that actually is. So if we say the flood was, 4,500 years or in that ballpark ago, to go back 65 million years, you're talking 16,000 times longer. That's just how much time 65 million years is. So it's just impossible that these cells could last that long.
It is indeed. Look, and I remember I was watching an interview, Michael, about that topic with an evolutionist. It was a creationist scientist and an evolutionist scientist. They were just debating and talking about that particular issue. And the creationist scientist was saying something to the likes of, look, we are always told that it would be absolutely impossible to find any kind of organic living tissue or organic soft tissue after 65 millions of years. And now that we found, you're trying to explain that away in some way that you don't know. And it was funny because the scientist that subscribed to the evolutionist perspective, he said, who said we said that it was impossible? We never said that. And as say, look, we never signed anything. If there's anything, don't hold that against us. And they say, we just need a little bit of time to find out what processes took place exactly. But reality is, just from using a logic perspective, I mean, fruit gets bad. I woke up this morning and I had a spoiled zucchini on my countertop. It was sitting there for maybe 4 days. Imagine 65 million years that would not remain a single shred of any biological soft content. So the reality is, even to have it preserved for a few thousand years, I think it would be already quite miraculous, wouldn't it?
It was not so much miraculous, but amazing. But it's interesting because we actually had a creation event a couple of weeks ago at a church, and they were really fascinated. And somebody asked a question saying, well, possibly could freezing help to make it last that long? So I explained why no way that would happen. But my wife, Desma, she works in a veterinary laboratory here in Hamilton, and she, of course, studies blood all the time. And so she said, no way that's going to work. And so she actually went to the lab and she did an experiment with a sample of blood that was spare. And she did a slide of the blood and took a photograph under the microscope of what a reasonably fresh blood cell sample would look like. And then she froze the remainder of it just overnight in the fridge, about -18, just domestic fridge. And then she did a slide of the cells the next day. And as she predicted, they freezing instantly what they call hemolyzers. It just ruptures the red cells. They just they go into a red mush. So you just end up with a smear of pink. So it completely freezing overnight destroys red blood cells very, very quickly.
Wow.
Yeah. So
and not to mention about the thawing of it. Even if you work, imagine the thawing of that blood cell. I mean, it would attract parasites and all kinds of decomposing creatures instantly, I'd imagine.
That's right, but also people again, they have this idea that the bone's been there for 65 million years when the Earth's supposed to have gone through millions of years of change, 50 ice ages and all sorts of things, percolation of just the changes in the world over that time. no matter how cold or how hot, it would have been absolutely destroyed. So yes, it's real science shows that it's completely impossible.
So Michael, look, help us to understand a little bit from a Bible perspective here. Of course, the Bible talks about life having been created on Earth, not more than about 6,000 years ago, around about that figure. And so how could fossils be created if not through the traditional view of millions and millions of years under a lot of pressure? What kind of events could have triggered and to preserve not only fossils, but even now, as you were saying, even soft tissues in some instances? How does that work?
That's right. So again, we get the age of the earth from the Bible is from, the creation week, 6 days of creation with a day of rest, the Sabbath. And then, and even Jesus talked about from the beginning of creation, he created them male and female. So Jesus believed that humans were created, in creation week. And if you add up all the chronologies of the patriarchs going down, you end up with an addition around about 6 or so thousand years by adding up the ages of the patriarchs from Adam all the way down to Jesus. And so that's how we get the age of the earth from the Bible. So that's our time frame. We believe the Bible is God's word. And so the flood is a fantastic way that you would get millions of fossils, things buried deeply and quickly, overwhelmed by a catastrophic worldwide flood that would have prevented them being scavenged or rotting or falling apart. So fossilize something, you have to bury it quickly enough for it not to degrade and disappear. And so we see these huge fossil graveyards, so they cannot have just laid out in the open and slowly been covered up. So yeah, the evidence of the fossils points to a catastrophic major event.
So when we talk about the flood, because usually we're not talking about just water alone, right? Because if it was just water, obviously everything would have decomposed, through the water agency. So how exactly did these fossils get covered?
So we're talking about the flood, of course, was a catastrophic event that would have been huge geological work, huge amounts of erosion, rocks being pulverized and ground down, huge amounts of earthquakes and volcanism and uplift. And so huge amounts of moving water containing large amounts of sediment, mud, silt and sand sweeping out and burying things deeply, including vegetation, of course, under huge hundreds or thousands of meters of thick sediment. And so you're talking about a geological catastrophe of unprecedented power. It's not just water slowly filling out like a bathtub. It's talking about a hugely violent erosional event. So ideal conditions, burying these creatures under thick layers of wet, sediment-rich material, huge amounts of pressure and heat from geological work. So ideal conditions to fossilize things, including forming coal and oil and so on from vegetation, which we know can happen quickly in the lab. So you need just the right conditions to fossilize or to create oil and coal from organic material.
Very interesting. No, that's absolutely fascinating. So the flood can very well explain the massive amounts of sediments and mud and water to squish things and to bury things that can be preserved in an oxygen-free environment for a long, long time, for thousands of years, thus creating fossils. Michael, we're coming up to the end of our segment now, but just reminds us again, where can we learn more about this amazing world of creation?
Okay, and just one very quick thing about the course of the fossils. If the fossils were the result of evolution, then that puts death and suffering and bloodshed before, the fall, I guess, which destroys the gospel. So please go to creation.com. We've got thousands of articles on there. We've got YouTube channels, social media channels. There's brilliant articles on the flood, on fossilization, dinosaurs. So creation.com is our website. Creation Magazine. Really encourage you to subscribe to that. And Info Bites, our email newsletter. Have a look at those and be blessed.
Creation.com. Thank you so much, Michael Cooke, for sharing with us some of your expertise and some of the news regarding creation and fossils. It's always a pleasure to have you with us on The Breakfast Show.
And likewise, it's such a privilege to be with you all. So have a great December and a fantastic Christmas as we celebrate our Saviour, and all the best for 2026. I'm back on the 6th of January, I think it is.